I just remember I woke up on like Saturday. I had a feeding tube.
Oh God.
And I was in the ICU, and my wife was there, and my dad was there, and my mom was there, and my kids were there. And I didn't understand what was happening. And basically what they told me was that my liver was dying, and that as a result, my kidneys had started to shut down. So, essentially multiple organ failure, which is not good. It was really scary, but I felt like such a piece of shit at that point anyways, you know what I'm saying? I felt like such a piece of shit. I didn't feel like I deserved to live.
There we go.
And so I had just resigned to the fact that I wasn't going to. And so if I'm not going to, where do we go from here?
Wow.
What can I accomplish in the time that I have left to make it as easy of a transition for my wife and kids as possible?
What's going on, you guys? My name is Noah. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we are going to share Doug's story. He's going to introduce himself in a moment. One of my intentions on this channel is to not only share my experience as it unfolds when it comes to mental health issues and addiction issues as it would pertain to this video, but also use this platform to give other men and women a chance to tell their story in hopes that it might reach someone whose ears are ready to receive this stuff, who might benefit from hearing someone speak their truth. So thank you guys for being here. Let's show Doug tons of support and love in the comment section. It takes a fair bit of bravery to get on camera or 3 cameras and share your story to the public simply as an act of service. There's nothing to be gained other than to have a real experience together and see who we might be able to help. Please know that you guys watching this does help support us as well, and it's empowering to have a platform and use it for good, I think. So with that being said, we're going to hear Doug's story. This has not been rehearsed or pre-planned, and we'll just see where we go. Doug, welcome to the YouTube channel.
Thank you.
Really happy that you're here.
Yeah.
Let's start, I guess, as early as you think might be necessary. If you want to start in your childhood, great. If you want to start when you first started having issues that led to substance, great. Wherever you think makes sense.
Sure. Yeah, so I'm Doug. I guess, mental health has been part of my story for a long time. Growing up, struggled a lot with anxiety and self-esteem issues.
When did you first start struggling with anxiety?
I think probably back as early as 10 or 11 years old, it started to become a real part of my life.
Was it like a physical anxiety or more like between your ears?
It was, more between my ears. Like I said, I struggled a lot with self-esteem, and that sort of, I think, led to the anxiety and depression, and
Yeah. When you say you struggle with self-esteem, do you mean like in the classic sense, like a death by comparison? Like you would just stack yourself up against other people and decided you weren't quite good enough? I know that's something I've struggled with.
Yeah, for sure. I was always kind of a bigger kid. I struggled a lot with my weight in my younger years. I was never any good at sports or anything like that, and so that led to a lot of self-esteem issues for me. Yeah.
Okay.
Feeling less than.
Yeah. Okay. And this is around 11.
Yeah.
What were your earliest memories of dealing with that, I guess? I can't even think clearly on what I did, but I'm curious to know what you think you did as an 11-year-old.
I don't think that I think looking back, I recognize a lot more of what I was feeling than I recognized then. I just knew in that moment that I didn't feel right. I didn't feel normal or adequate, I guess.
Did you have friends?
So I did have some friends. I grew up, I was homeschooled. And so,
interesting.
Yeah, I didn't grow up with a huge friend group. A lot of my friends were, from church, or we were part of some homeschooling groups. We also moved around a bit kind of in that time frame.
Okay.
And so, at that at that point in time, at that age, I didn't have like an established friend group.
Did you, what was the home environment like? Do you have siblings? I can't remember. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I guess I know you have one.
Yeah, I've got one younger brother and then a younger sister.
Okay, you have two sibs.
Yeah.
So what was like 11 years old, going through your first perceived issues of anxiety and self-worth? You've got a brother and a sister. What's the general nucleus of the family look like? What's a typical day in the life for Doug at that age?
Yeah, so when I was, so my younger sister was born when I was 9.
Big difference there.
Yeah, and shortly after she was born, my dad had lost his job here, and we moved to Mississippi for a job. Spent a few months there, and then we ended up back here in the Northwest. And at that point in time, my parents were going through some marital issues. There was separation, an eventual divorce. And so there was a lot of uncertainty at that stage of my life. So home life was difficult at that point, and I just didn't know how to deal really with my feelings, I don't think, at that age.
Were you already dealing with some overweight issues at that age?
Yeah.
Can you be more specific?
Yeah, well, when I was, I was just always kind of heavy. I remember specifically when I was, I think 11 or 12, I had joined like a youth football program, and they had a weight requirement. You had to be, and it was strange, the older you were, the less you had to weigh. By a couple pounds. They expected you to become more fit, I guess, as you got older.
Okay.
And I didn't make the weight. I was too heavy. And so, at that point I had already started like doing some dieting and stuff like that.
Even as an 11 or 12-year-old?
Yeah, in order to try and make weight for football, and I didn't end up making it. And so that was sort of the first time that I realized that my weight was different than my peers.
What did you weigh?
So I was about 140 pounds, I guess, at 11.
11. Okay, I guess that is a fair bit heavier than some kids. Doesn't sound that crazy, though.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
No. By the time I was in high school, when I got my driver's license at 16, I was like 375.
Wow, okay. So take us from 11, 12, middle school, going into high school. Obviously food must have taken on a different role for you. If you want to dive into that a little bit, as far as you can remember.
Sure.
In any way that might play into some of the addiction issues that you're going to later discuss.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I don't remember, I think I was probably, well, let's see, my 2002, so 2002 I was 13. So when I was 13, my parents separated. And so my dad had moved out. We were spending some time with him, some time with my mom. And I think for all of us, sort of food was just like a comfort kind of thing. It just sort of became a comfort thing. And it became a thing that, just kind of filled a void, for me anyways. It filled a void of, feelings. It helped me feel better for a time, right?
When your parents separated, thank you for sharing that. How did that impact you as a 13-year-old? Because I think I had this idea of what it must be like for people whose parents divorce or separate when they're younger in adolescence. And as someone whose parents divorced as an adult, my parents divorced a couple of years ago, and recognizing how upsetting that wound up being for our family, even as grown kids, and how personally annoying it was and emotionally triggering it was for me as a grown-up, I instantly started to wonder, how the fuck do kids deal with this? Especially kids, I think, that are at the age you're describing, as opposed to, let's say, like a 3 or 4-year-old. Not that won't impact them, I'm sure it does. But did you experience anger, frustration, apathy? You said you turned to food. Was that a conscious thing? Like, what's it like to be a 13-year-old whose parents are getting divorced, who already admittedly said that you're dealing with self-esteem issues anyway.
Yeah, it was really hard. And actually, to expand on their story a little bit, they didn't divorce at that point.
Okay. But he moved out.
He did move out, but there was, for a period of about 10 years, they divorced in 2012.
Oh.
So for a period of about 10 years, there was separation, reconciliation for several times.
See, that sounds like...
And it was really hard.
Yeah.
And by the time they divorced, I was frustrated that they hadn't divorced a long time ago.
Gotcha.
And yeah, there was just a lot of anger. There was a lot of confusion.
Yeah.
I didn't understand what was going on. I didn't understand necessarily why. I didn't understand necessarily why there was reconciliation. That was confusing and frustrating.
Yeah.
And so it led to a lot of big feelings.
Were you mad at your dad? Were you mad at your mom? Was it a pretty evenly distributed frustration?
I think it depended on
the day,
the phase.
Yeah,
right? I mean,
the phase.
At times I was angry with my dad. At times I was frustrated with my mom.
How did that manifest for you?
Versa.
Did you lash out? Did you grow sullen and just avoid?
Yeah, I was very much introspective. It was very much internal. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. If I might just push the button, when did you first try alcohol?
Yeah, the first time I ever drank alcohol was on my honeymoon, actually.
That's right, that's so wild. Okay, well, let's not go that far then.
Okay.
A preview of things to come. That's just a while. When I hear people's first experience drinking alcohol is like that far out, because you guys got married in your 20s, I'm assuming.
I was 19.
Okay.
Yeah.
That does
a little different.
Soften the blow.
Yeah.
But still, it's like I got drunk for the first time at 13 years old.
Yeah.
And I'm someone who just, I thought that was so normal to get, even then, to get drunk at that age, because a ton of people I knew were already getting drunk. Part of your story, obviously, you're on the channel to talk about your experiences with addiction and mental health and recovery.
Yeah.
But I always think it's interesting that even someone could wait till 19 to have had alcohol for the first time. You said you had a pretty strong religious background?
Yeah, grew up in the church. Like I said, I was homeschooled all the way through high school. I went to school for my 6th grade year and part of my 8th grade year, but the remainder of that time I was homeschooled. And so my friend group consisted of friends from youth group at church and friends from a faith-based homeschooling group.
Okay.
And so
you did have plenty of social connections, or at least the chance to.
In high school I did.
In high school you did, okay.
Yeah.
Were you socially awkward at first when you got into high school, do you think? Or
I'm still socially awkward.
Really? I think you do just fine. I was actually thinking to myself, like, man, Doug's pretty adjusted for being someone who was homeschooled for so long, because I met some kids that were homeschooled that I don't even want to say there's anything wrong with them, because there's not, but some of them are just a little less fluid socially because they didn't grow up around a bunch of idiots 24/7 and having to make those calibrations, I guess you would say. High school. Before we get to you finding your wife and getting married and trying alcohol, you're overweight in high school.
Yeah.
Is there anything, I guess, that comes to mind that's like, it's probably worth noting that this happened in high school? Or was high school like for...
High school was pretty normal.
Okay.
High school was pretty normal for me.
Yeah.
High school was good. I had a strong friend group within my church youth group.
Yeah.
High school was good. Those were good years.
Yeah, I appreciate you reflecting on that. I sometimes think that there's like a pressure. Well, let me speak for myself, but I've had like this thought, like, man, I need to come up with some reason that shit got so wild for me in addiction. And then I think about like high school, and in the grand scheme of my high school experience, it's like, that was pretty freaking awesome. Like, I really enjoyed high school. I don't remember there being any major issues in high school. However, like you said, you were dealing with self-esteem issues. Your parents were together, not together, separated, dealing with reconciliation, a lot of confusion. You were overweight. There were plenty of things to reach elsewhere to find support for. So I get that doesn't necessarily take much, but okay, I digress.
Okay.
After high school, let's build up to your first time drinking, and let's just kind of see where it goes.
Yeah. After high school, I went to college.
Where'd you go?
I went to a private Bible college.
Okay.
Actually,
Did you study theology?
I did.
Do you have a degree in theology?
I have an associate's degree in theology, yeah.
Okay. And what's your bachelor's?
I don't have a bachelor's.
Oh, so you stopped after your associates?
Yep.
Okay.
I went back to school in my 20s, but I never finished my degree.
Gotcha. You and I have that in common then. College dropouts.
Yeah. College dropouts. There you go.
Still paying for it. Yeah, are you really?
No.
Oh, okay. That's really funny. Okay, sorry. So, you meet your wife, Leah.
Yeah.
In school?
Yeah, we met the first day of college. Well, so she actually was friends with a cousin of mine in high school. And so we connected on MySpace.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Excellent.
Before college.
Okay.
But we met in person. We were just, chatting back and forth that summer. And then we met the first day of school. Became friends right away. Had a friend group right away that we were all friends together. And I think probably like a month later, we started dating. And
wow.
The rest is history.
Yeah.
Dated for those 2 years of college, got engaged in our last semester, and then got married that fall of 2008.
How was your relationship with food during this time? Given that you said you were very overweight in high school, are we still dealing with weight issues in college?
Yeah.
Okay. And obviously that wasn't a barrier for Leah.
No.
Yeah. So she saw through that part of your story. Not to say that there's anything bad or wrong about dealing with weight issues or being heavier, but it becomes a very big part of your story, as we're going to discuss. So I just was curious to know, like, where was your headspace with your body image and your self-image then?
Yeah.
Because now you have the attention of a pretty girl. You're in college, you're not in high school. I mean, that must have been good for your self-esteem.
Yeah. College was good. I had not yet reached the weight that I eventually reached. Okay. I was probably somewhere around 350 to 375 pounds.
And to give people perspective, Doug, what do you weigh right now?
I weigh about 205.
Yeah. So you were already, we're talking pre-peak weight, what we're referencing right now, you were 150 pounds heavier than you are right now.
Yeah,
that's wild. Congrats, obviously, on turning your life around.
Thanks,
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
It's a huge deal. Okay. So you drank on your honeymoon. What was your first experience like drinking?
I'm trying to think of the word.
Sure. Nothing special?
Nothing special. No.
You didn't have that like,
I was like,
this is amazing.
No, I was excited to try beer.
Yeah, but what was your very first drink?
Yeah, we went to the hotel. We were in Mexico. Went to the hotel and I had a Negro Modelo. That was my first drink.
There are worse first drinks. Okay, and how many did you have the first time you drank?
One.
Wow.
One.
And no like, ooh, I want another?
Nope.
Okay. So you had a pretty benign first experience.
Completely, yeah.
Okay, take us from there.
Yeah, so from there, I worked in restaurants. I was a general manager for a fast casual restaurant for a number of years.
What does fast casual mean?
Like Chipotle.
Okay.
Or Qdoba.
So that's like a tier above fast food?
Yeah.
Is that why you would call it a fast casual?
Yeah.
I've never heard that before.
Oh, really?
A fast casual.
Fast casual. Yeah, like something like Mod Pizza or Chipotle.
I love it.
Qdoba.
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
So I was the general manager for Chipotle.
Okay.
Yep. Well, I started in the kitchen, but I had progressed to become a general manager. And throughout that period, those first few years of our marriage, from 2008 to 2018, I just sort of, life happened. We had our first child. I was working super long hours, got free food at the restaurant, lived on my own, or not on my own, but lived with my wife in our own place. And, I just continued to put on weight. I just continued to eat more than I needed to and got, significantly heavier.
How's your mental health during this process, would you say?
Well, I mean, I was good when we first got married. It was exciting and happy.
Yeah.
As that's a 10-year span there, right? But in there, my parents ended up getting divorced. Some other family issues occurred. So there were ups and downs, but overall, it was, it's a happy life. Yeah.
Okay, so your overall perception of those 10 years, despite the weight gain, weren't inherently negative.
No.
It almost seems, was the weight gain kind of just one of those things for you that when it really got apparent that it was like, whoa, we're having an issue here, it kind of snuck up on you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was gradual. It was, I had always been heavier, but then, at one point I was just like, what is going on?
Yeah.
I ended up leaving the restaurant business, and I started working in the business world, and had to do some travel for work. And flying on planes was kind of a eye-opener for me.
Why?
Because I didn't fit in the seats.
Oh, right. Okay, we're talking just practically speaking.
Just practically speaking, I didn't fit in the seats. I had to ask for the seatbelt extender. I remember a couple of occasions getting on a plane and feeling the need to apologize to the person next to me because I'm spilling over into their seat.
That must have been really tough.
And that was tough. Along with just the normal struggle of young, early 20s, early marriage.
Were you having physical issues? Sleep apnea, anything like that?
Nothing that was diagnosed.
Okay.
No, I just, things just became harder.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But you just don't notice it. It's a slow progression. You don't really notice necessarily until.
Are you comfortable pulling the curtain back on what a typical day of eating was like for you as someone who had gotten up to, at this point, are we in the 400s?
Yeah.
Okay, so what does a typical day of eating actually look like because you're healthy now, you're sober, you're in shape, you look great, you sound great, your skin's good, you're in a really good place. Mm-hmm. How different is your day-to-day eating now than when you were 4 or nearly 500 pounds?
Yeah. Oh, very different. I worked in the restaurants, right? And so typically it would be I'd grab fast food for breakfast on the way.
Like what?
A couple of breakfast sandwiches from a restaurant and a large soda. Okay. And eat that on the way to work. Usually have a meal at work at 10 o'clock before the restaurant opens. A big burrito. Sure. Another one somewhere throughout the day. And then, I just didn't make good food choices either, we ate a lot of fast food, we ate out a lot, just a lot of what you would consider not healthy choices. And then on top of that, I just ate more than anybody else, right? I mean,
would you guess you were hitting 5,000-6,000 calories a day?
Easily. Yeah.
It's really not that hard to do.
It's not that hard to.
No.
If you're eating pizza and drinking soda, it's not hard to hit 6,000-7,000 calories probably.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
And ice cream was a big part of my story too.
It's starting to become a nightly part of my story right now.
Ice cream every night.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you like the Halo Top.
Not recently.
Oh, okay.
But I'm more of like a Breyers homemade vanilla guy with mangoes and some like chopped walnuts or something. I think it's delightful.
Well, I was like a giant bowl of whatever.
Yeah. So no depression during this time that you can really pinpoint?
It wasn't diagnosed. Recently, in recent years, I've spoken with my doctor and been diagnosed with clinical depression and anxiety. Yeah. And I've gotten some help for that. And through that, I've noticed that there probably was some undiagnosed, anxiety and depression in that time.
Yeah, that's been my own reflection on my life. I think that I didn't realize I was experiencing depression and anxiety prior to my clinical breakdown. Like at some point, my depression and anxiety got so bad that it was undeniable. There was no like speculation. I was suicidal. Yeah. Add on all of the symptoms you would say of depression and anxiety. I had them. They were aggressive. It was very scary. But when I kind of look back from age like 19 to 25, there was a progression of apathy, of a flatness to life, of an insecurity about my intelligence and my place in the world. Yeah. Some erectile dysfunction issues that I was personally having that. I have to sort this out. Some erectile function issues that were happening. words. But I just chalked it up to be like I was nervous or stressed or whatever. Yeah.
Well, and I think a big part of it for me is, being a young dad at that point, being a single income household, just like that pressures of, of being a man and growing up in a house and in an era where it's, men don't show emotions, right?
So was your dad not terribly expressive that way?
Yeah, not particularly.
Yeah. So you didn't necessarily have like modeling of this is a healthy dynamic between a man and a woman, or this is how men express their thoughts and feelings, sort of thing.
Yeah, I think, both sides of my family, if I look at, uncles and grandparents and, my dad, there's just talking about your emotions and your feelings is just not a big part of of that life.
Okay.
Yeah.
Drinking. What's going on with drinking in this time frame? So you said from 2008 to 2018, you were just talking about the weight gain, life happened, you're having kids, you're married, mental health, some stuff's happening or whatever. Where are we with drinking? Because as the viewers are gonna find out, it becomes a horrifying part of your story as far as the depths of despair it took you to. Where are we with that?
And that's a part of my story that I'll never really understand, I don't think, but I drank normally for a really long time.
What do you think normally is?
I would drink maybe once, maybe twice a week. I would go a couple of months without drinking. It was always a social thing. I would drink with friends. We would we'd go out and, sample craft beers or drink good whiskey, but it was never, I never partied or anything like that.
So you didn't obsess about drinking between drinking?
No.
Wow. And
Nope.
you didn't, once you started drinking at that time, you weren't like compelled to drink a fuck ton every
Nope.
time? That's a formal way of putting that, by the
A
way.
fuck ton.
Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah. Okay, that is an interesting part of your story.
The first time I remember getting drunk was at my brother's bachelor party in 2014 or 15.
Yeah. Wow. And you're 30.
I'm 35.
You're 35 now.
So I was
like 26.
late 20s.
Yeah, 27. Okay. And how was that experience?
Oh, it was miserable.
Yeah.
I puked all over the
Oh,
sidewalk.
damn. Yeah, that's tough. I remember my first beer. I'm just teasing. Okay. Well, unless anything specific pops to mind, let's talk about when that relationship did shift from being normal, which it sounds like it really was for you. I think when I reflect on my own story, some of my timing was normal. I could go when I was younger, pretty big gaps of time initially without drinking, but if I drank, I wanted to get really drunk. I never had an experience other than that. And once I drank for the first time, I did think about drinking a lot. Mm-hmm. I mean, even as a 13-year-old, I thought about it a lot. So over time, my physical volume went up and my progression of my addiction changed. But the antsiness to be a drinker, that seemed to start for me right away, and that wasn't exactly your story, which, by the way, is so important for people to talk about. I think there's this idea that an alcoholic or someone who struggles with addiction or whatever is one certain type of way, and I sort of forget that that is still a public perception issue, because you and I know a million different versions of people with drinking issues that led to the same result, but I think a lot of people still think an alcoholic is someone under a bridge with a brown paper bag, or someone who's lost everything. So anyway, please continue with your story.
So in 2019, in January, I woke up and decided that I didn't want to be so large anymore. I didn't want to be that heavy anymore. I had a new job and I had good health benefits, and so I started looking into bariatric surgery.
Which is?
So like a gastric bypass.
Got it.
And so, so from the beginning of 2019 until August, I made a lot of changes in my eating habits, and I was able to lose approximately 90 or 100 pounds in that 9-month period. And then in August of 2019, I had gastric bypass surgery.
So you had to lose that weight first.
I lost about 100 pounds before my surgery.
Just out of curiosity, why did you have to lose weight before doing the operation that was going to help you lose weight?
So it was, it's like a 6-month process to get that surgery. You have to go through some nutrition coaching. You have to go through some, they want to see you make some positive changes on your own. You have to go through a psychiatric evaluation because they don't want, it's not a one and done, fix it kind of situation.
Right.
You need to demonstrate that you're able to make some changes so that it can, continue to be a healthy transition for you post-surgery.
Okay. As opposed to just like a Band-Aid experience.
Right.
Did you surprise yourself in your ability to modify behavior enough to lose 100 pounds? And
Yeah.
did any part of that make you think, maybe I don't need to do this surgery?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was a very proud moment for me, a very
No
proud
kidding.
time.
I
Yeah.
bet so.
I was very excited about that. I ultimately came to the conclusion to have the surgery because I didn't want to take 3 or 4 years to lose all the weight. I was impatient.
How fast did you end up losing the weight once you had the surgery? Because if I understand correctly, they're essentially making the room available in your stomach smaller.
Yes.
Right. So your perception of being full would be very sensitive.
Yes.
Right. Okay. How much weight did you lose? How fast after the surgery?
It was pretty quick. I think, if I may, I can.
Please. You may, sir.
So,
We'll tell the production crew to just hang tight.
okay. So I had that surgery August 2019, and I'm trying to pull up.
That's okay. Take your time.
And then by April of 2020,
August 2019, April 2020.
yeah, I
Okay.
was down to 250 pounds.
From?
So I was 410 pounds on my surgery date.
Wow.
So then I lost 160 between August and April, so 6 months.
That must have been a weird experience.
It was wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What did your wife think?
It was really exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was exciting.
You know, we're going to obviously get into the mucky muck, as we say in the business. But I look at you, right? I've only known you like this. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that you've never known me in my addiction. But I guess I would have thought that your face and your skin would show more signs of having been heavy. I think you've told me you have some skin, loose skin on your stomach, right?
Yeah.
And on your chest.
Yeah.
But you look like you've always looked this way. Were you surprised that your body bounced back or responded like this?
Well, so
Or maybe I'm just ignorant.
no, so I did have skin removal surgery in my abdomen.
Are you glad you did that?
I am.
Yeah, was that
Yeah.
painful?
Yes, that was terrifying, actually.
What was terrifying about it?
So one of the things when you are that heavy, your blood vessels become larger in order to supply blood to all of the tissue that you
Right,
have. And so
okay.
when you lose the weight, your blood vessels don't necessarily contract back down to what they were before.
Okay.
And so I actually had an experience where when I had the skin removal surgery, I had an internal bleed and had to have a second emergency surgery to correct that. And I had like 12 units of blood transfused. Yeah, so that was scary. I don't regret it though.
That was like a near-death experience.
Yeah.
You still don't regret it.
No.
This guy's a real badass. That's wild. Okay, so you've dropped all this weight. Thank you
Yep.
for sharing all that, by the way.
Sure.
Take us into where things went awry then with alcohol. Presumably you're not eating too unhealthy, and or at the very least, and I use the word unhealthy loosely because we're all different and different things work for different people, but you're probably not escaping through food the way you once were. At the very least, you're in a deficit, which means you're eating less calories than you're burning, so you're losing weight. When did alcohol take on its own new relationship with you? When did it start changing from being like something that seems very modest to something that was really, really dangerous?
Yeah, the lines for that are a little bit blurry for me. But I do know that for me, one of the things I experienced with that surgery is when I do drink, the effects take place very quickly for me.
Really? I don't remember hearing about this before.
Yeah. It doesn't take a lot for me to get drunk, necessarily, and it happens very quickly.
Okay.
And then another, phenomena with the surgery is, I don't have a lot of room in my stomach, and so very quickly, I think, probably if I'm being honest and I look back, it was probably sort of like summer of 21 that I started to notice that my alcohol intake was more than I was comfortable with. And, one of the results of that surgery is I would just substitute alcohol for food a lot.
But like, when did I know you said the lines are blurred, but when do you go from like, I could go months without it, never craved it, never got drunk, to now I'm subbing food for alcohol? Like, I'm still trying to understand how that happened. You don't even know.
I honestly don't know.
It's just like one day you maybe drank on your own for the first time, as opposed to with friends.
Yeah, I think so. During that time, 21, 22, there was a lot of upheaval in the family.
External family, not like...
Yeah, external family. So my mom and her fiance broke up, and he and I are very close. Even to this day, we're very close, and that was really hard for me. And there was a divorce with another family member that was really tough. And I'm not really sure. I had put myself in an environment with a group of friends that drank a lot, and I'm not sure.
It's okay.
Really, how I got there?
Yeah,
but
honestly, the little bit of info you just gave there kind of helps a little bit.
And I think a big part of it too that I didn't. They talk about, but I didn't give enough weight to, is that addiction transfer issue, where perhaps I had an addiction to food. Right. I believe I probably did, and transfer to something that I had the ability to consume to the degree that I felt comfortable or that I wanted to. Yeah. Where I couldn't with food. If I ate too much food to feel better, I would become sick. Because I just didn't have the capacity, the stomach capacity for it.
That's so interesting. That's a really, really, really nuanced point. That now you can't even overeat, even if you want to overeat.
No.
Did that ever feel anxiety provoking? Like, were you ever thinking to yourself, okay, I just want to eat a cake right now. I just want to eat myself happy. I physically can't. Nothing I can do about it. Did you ever freak?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
See, like I think that'd be something I could pigeonhole my mind, at least in an acute moment of stress. Be like, fuck. Yeah. Like I can't do anything. Like I'm stuck.
Yeah. It was really. Yeah. It was hard.
Yeah.
It was kidding. And one of the things that I experienced with my surgery, for whatever reason, I'm not sure, but I just, from 2019 until November of 23, in November 23, I developed an ulcer and had to have my gastric bypass redone.
Oh, dang, I forgot about that.
But through that period of time, I just was never able to eat well at all. I always struggled with becoming sick if I ate really any food.
To excess or just?
No, just in general, I had a hard time keeping any food down for some reason.
That sounds awful.
It's better now.
Are you still? I was going to ask. Are you still unable to consume too much food, or at some point do they reverse it?
It's not reversible. No. You can expand, your stomach just like you can just like I did when I was heavier, right? I mean, I consumed more. You can expand, you know, the new stomach that they've built to consume more, but I still can't, and also choose not to, you know, overeat.
So you couldn't wolf down right now 3,000 or 4,000 calories in one meal, even if you wanted to?
No.
But you could, over the course of a day, get to 2,000 or 3,000 calories a day?
Over the course of a day, I could eat not as much as I wanted, but I could certainly
get to like your calorie goals.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's an aside. Okay, so alcohol, you're starting to drink it more, you're subbing it for food, which is definitely a warning sign. I used to do the same thing.
Yeah.
I wanted to...
Hits different on an empty stomach.
100%. I wanted to get as drunk as I could, as fast as I could. Food was kind of a waste of time in that regard, and if anything, it blunted the effects, period, going forward, and I was chasing the feelings, so we have that in common. Let's keep going. Let's get to the nitty-gritty of it all.
All right. Yeah, so where things really took a turn for me was summer of 22. I was drinking a lot, and I couldn't control it. I wasn't able to and didn't want to.
Did you make any attempts to control it?
Occasionally I would try.
And what did an attempt look like when you say try?
I would try and titrate down my consumption.
How much were you drinking at that time, summer of 22?
Probably...
Ballpark.
Yeah, probably 12 to 15 drinks a day.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what did Leah think, or what was she saying?
She wasn't saying a lot.
The quiet desperation of life.
Yeah. You know, there were a couple of occasions where she would say something like, "Oh, we just bought that case of seltzers from Costco, and I didn't even have one, and they're gone."
Yeah.
You know, and I was, "Oh, yeah, you know, I had a friend over or whatever," and then I just decided, okay, she's noticing, so I'll buy some on my own and hide it.
Yeah. For sure.
And in August of 21, I was leaving a poker game and walking to my truck, and my legs just collapsed. I had no strength in my legs, and I couldn't stand back up, and tried to get to my truck, and I couldn't. And that was the first time I ended up in the hospital. And it's embarrassing to say, I was intending to drive home that night, but when I got to the hospital, they took my blood work to try and figure out what was going on, and I had a blood alcohol content of, I think, 0.17 at that time.
And for perspective, the legal limit is 0.08.
Yeah.
It takes most men our size, I'm guessing 3 or 4, to get to 0.08. That's how I perceive it to be. So we're looking at... Okay,
Probably,
so like 8 to 10 beers deep?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and I was not at all ready to admit at that point that there was a problem with my drinking. At least I wasn't willing to talk about it or, do anything about it.
Yeah.
But I'm fully convinced that was related to my drinking, and from that point on...
What did they decide it was from?
They said it was probably some nerve thing. I've done some... I'm not a doctor, obviously, but I've done some research, and there's a thing called... I can't remember the technical term for it, but there's a condition where if you consume a lot of alcohol, it can cause issues with your lower extremities, specifically a nerve issue.
Interesting.
That is typically not reversible or not reversible in its entirety. So.
Interesting. Okay, very insightful. Where do we go from here?
Yeah, so I spent a couple days in the hospital.
Oh, you were there for multiple days.
Yeah, I was there for a couple days. And this is where timelines get really blurry for me. But I went home, and I was struggling with that leg weakness for a long time. Had a hard time, even walking up steps unassisted with a rail or something like that. And I continued to drink. My wife had gone back to work at this point because my youngest child was now in kindergarten, and so she's working outside the home. Both my kids are in school, and I work from home remotely. And that's when my drinking really became an issue. I discovered morning drinking.
Yeah.
I discovered that if you wake up hungover and you have a drink, you're not hungover anymore.
Yeah.
And so my drinking continued to accelerate. There was a lot of hiding. There was a lot of either missing social events, family events, or drinking before them and going for a short time and getting home to continue drinking.
How's your emotional state at this point? How's your sense of self?
Absolutely in the toilet. Yeah. It was terrible.
Yeah.
I just felt completely demoralized and powerless, and it was really ugly. It was really ugly.
Was there anyone at that point that you were able to talk to or felt comfortable talking to, even if you weren't ready to change or didn't know how to change? Because I think for me, one of the worst parts, I don't want to be cavalier and say it was the worst part, but one of the worst parts about being in active addiction for me was this inability or unwillingness to tell someone I'm in trouble, while simultaneously begging myself to tell someone I'm in trouble because I'm burning up. But whatever alcohol was doing for me, or kind of still doing for me, was still so strong, and I was so physically addicted that it would usually overwhelm that voice in me that'd be like, dude, please ask for help, like it's okay. And that voice typically came out for me middle of the morning, like early morning, 3, 4, 5 a.m., detoxing, writhing, not doing well. I would, like, if there was a moment to say, help, I'm scared, I need help, that was kind of my moment. Because if I could push past that moment, which I usually did, I would just be back on the cycle too fast to then get that moment of clarity. I wonder if that happened for you at all.
Yeah, I wanted to ask for help so bad, but I was too scared or too unwilling. And it's really sad because where I am now, looking back, there were certainly people that I could have asked for help, and they would have been more than willing to help me without an air of judgment or anything like that. People that love me deeply would have been more than willing to help if I had reached out and asked, but I was unwilling. And I think that's, a big part of addiction is, at least for me, the alcohol addiction, it leads to a loneliness and a feeling of being alone that, may not actually exist.
Yeah, that's a really, really, really wonderfully put statement. May not even exist. I was taught in treatment, we did like an alcohol addiction education course. It was part of the deal. And they were talking about how alcohol is the only substance, I think, I hope I'm not misquoting this, but it's the only substance that creates a chemical bond with its user in the form of massive oxytocin release, which is what you might normally experience, let's say when you're embracing a loved one, certainly when you're engaged in intimacy with your significant other. It's a bonding hormone, and alcohol creates a bond in that pathway, I guess you would say, with the person consuming it. And it's very fleeting, but it's very elusive, and it makes it very hard to connect with other people.
It was my best friend.
Yeah.
And it was the place I felt most comfortable.
Yeah.
Which is just very sad.
It is sad.
Looking back on that time.
Okay, where do we go from here?
Yeah, so continued to drink, developed an ulcer in November. And
November of
2022.
2022.
Ended up back in the hospital and had surgery for that. At this point, the doctor, told me that I should probably consider not drinking. My liver enzymes were elevated. My blood work was kind of just all over the map.
Yeah.
It wasn't good. I did my best at that point to hide it from my family, hide my blood work from my family, and the things my doctor was telling me. At this point, my wife had a pretty good idea that there was an issue.
Yeah.
And
Were you still performing at work? Pardon the interruption.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a trip. Do you ever look back on that and just marvel at the fact that you were able to keep your life together, at least to some degree, for as long as you did? Because I know I do. As unmanageable as my life became, and it's actually laughable if you were able to like put it on a spreadsheet and see just how many plates that were spinning or dropping. But at the same time, if I'm able to get out of like pure loathing and judgment, I'm like, damn, like how the fuck did I even keep it going as long as I did, relative to how I felt, relative to how much I was drinking? I think it's pretty astounding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It's kind of amazing.
It's terrible.
Okay, so,
yeah.
so your wife is onto something, you're hiding blood work, your doctor is recommending the obvious.
Yeah, and at this point, when I was in the hospital that time, she had gone into my home office to clean it while I was in the hospital and had found my stash.
Yeah.
And so I came home from the hospital at that point, and I did the thing that all alcoholics do: promise that I'm going to change, I'm not going to drink. Then I had convinced myself that I just need to not drink as much.
Yeah.
We all do it. All of us alcoholics do it. And we all know where that leads. So I continued to drink, continued to just not be good. My health continued to deteriorate. And at one point, I think it was in December of 22 or January, I was just really unhappy, really unhappy. I was in a really dark place mentally. I had reached out to like a mental health crisis hotline through my work, and was talking to them, and they ended up sending the police to my house, and I went and talked with a mental health professional, convinced them and myself that I was fine, and I went home and continued. And in February of 2023, I had started to, my abdomen had started to become distended, started to become jaundiced, and
so for anyone that might not know, if your abdomen's distending, it means you're retaining fluid in your abdomen because your kidneys aren't flushing you out properly, or is that clearly, or is it just related to the liver?
I think it's just related to the liver.
And so if you're experiencing some jaundice, which means your skin is changing pigment, which means your liver is not processing properly. Right. To put it overly simplified, but yeah. So your liver is essentially shutting down.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And so I ended up at Tuwality Hospital in Hillsborough, and I think, I'm trying to recall. Actually, let me back up just a moment.
Of course.
In February of 2023, I was really ill. And I remember I had woken up one night in the middle of the night to use the bathroom, and stopped to get a drink on the way, because that's the stage of alcoholism I was in. I was drinking all day.
Yeah. How many drinks a day? Ballpark.
It was at least a bottle, at least a fifth of vodka a day.
So 18 to 20 shots a day?
Yeah.
Yeah, ish.
And I made it, and I got really dizzy, and made it to the bathroom, and I passed out, and hit my head, got up, got back to bed, and then in the morning I got up and the same thing happened in my bedroom, and I told my wife, I must have the flu, I must be dehydrated, I don't feel good, and she's like, well, I got to take our daughter to school. Are you okay to stay home with our son until...
It was how old at the time?
5.
Yeah.
Until I get back. And I was like, yeah, I'm fine. And so, he and I are sitting in the living room, and I need to get up to go to the bathroom again. And I end up, the same thing happens again for a third time on the way to the bathroom, and I fall and I hit my head on the hardwood floor.
Oh, man.
And I wake up to him laying down next to me, patting me on the face, you know, and he's on the phone with my wife on FaceTime. He had the wherewithal to grab a phone and call my wife. And
Your 5-year-old did?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And he's saying, Daddy fell down and I can't wake him up. And he's telling me, Daddy, wake up, Daddy, wake up. And so I end up at the hospital that day, spent a couple days there. I had a paracentesis there.
What's that mean?
A paracentesis is where they insert a needle into your abdomen and a catheter, and they drain the fluid that you're retaining.
Yeah.
I spent a night, maybe 2 there, and went home, and then I had a terrible bruise on my left hip.
From the fall?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Are they putting you on Librium at this time to help with withdrawal? Are they giving you benzodiazepines
No.
for your anxiety? Or are you just cold turkey withdrawing? Are you still drinking?
Yeah, I'm still drinking.
You're still drinking.
Um,
Real quick,
yes.
when you noticed that your skin was becoming jaundiced, which again is yellow, did you notice any change in the whites of your eyes as well?
Yeah.
And when your belly started to distend, did any part of you freak out?
Yeah.
Man, I didn't get to that point.
Right.
I was on my way. I believe that with all my heart. I hadn't gotten physically to that point. However, I was shaking in the morning, about like this, and out of paranoia, because I was dealing with sharp stabbing pains in my stomach, which I imagine could be an ulcer. I was checking the toilet after I'd used the bathroom for blood. I was looking at my eyes in the mirror. One of the weirdest things for me was that I know that I had health anxiety to the max. And I knew if I could just stop drinking, even for a time, I try to plead with myself, like, fine, we're not gonna get sober. Can we chill out for a week? For 2 weeks, just something to let my body heal, and I couldn't personally do it. And so I just wondered if that scare was enough. You're like, dude, I'm gonna die.
Yeah.
And it sounds like it wasn't.
It was not.
Yeah, that's so wild, man.
It wasn't. I went home for a couple days, and I had this really bad bruise on my hip. And I ended up going to the emergency room, and that led to, they did blood work and another paracentesis. And that night, I was at the small hospital here in Hillsborough. They came into my room and said, we're going to transport you by ambulance to OHSU because we're concerned about you, and we don't have doctors here that are able to handle your case. So that was on a Thursday or a Friday. I went to OHSU, and they put me in the ICU, and they were just monitoring me. They were talking to me about my liver. I had a CAT scan.
I don't remember what a CAT scan is.
They scan your body. It's like similar to an MRI, I think, but they are able to see the soft tissue.
Got it.
And get a really good picture of your internal organs and things like that.
Got it. Okay.
And so my liver was enlarged and hardened, and my gallbladder was not doing well either. It had the bile was sludgy. Like I said, I'm not a doctor, so I don't know.
You're actually describing the medical side of this very, very well.
Yeah, and I'm not entirely sure what happened, but I just remember I woke up on Saturday. I had a feeding tube.
Oh God.
And I was in the ICU, and my wife was there, and my dad was there, and my mom was there, and my kids were there. And I didn't understand what was happening. And basically what they told me was that my liver was dying, and that as a result, my kidneys had started to shut down. So, essentially multiple organ failure, which is not good. And so they gave me a medication to try and trick my kidneys, jumpstart my kidneys into functioning again. And that worked.
Where's your head right now? You're like talking about this life or death stuff pretty calmly. What are you thinking in those? Are you even coherent enough to think clearly? Are you drugged up too much to process any fear, any emotion? Are you praying? Do you think you're gonna die? I'm trying to imagine being in your shoes, and I'm struggling.
I was convinced I was gonna die, so my only thoughts were, okay, I've got to figure out the finances for my wife, figure out this stuff, help get all of that stuff, all of my passwords and things written down and figured out so that she's not lost.
So you're like, you resided to, I'm going to die, and now you're just thinking in practical terms?
Yeah.
You weren't dealing with like intense fear? Did your faith kind of prevent you from being overly afraid of dying?
No, my faith was
waning
at that period of my life.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. You sound so stoic about something that sounds so scary.
Yeah, I mean, it was really scary, but I felt like such a piece of shit at that point anyways, you know what I'm saying? I felt like such a piece of shit. I didn't feel like I deserved to live.
There we go.
And so I had just resigned to the fact that I wasn't going to. And so if I'm not going to, where do we go from here?
Wow.
What can I accomplish in the time that I have left to make it as easy of a transition for my wife and kids as possible?
That is so ridiculously tragic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And it doesn't end there. So,
golly.
Yeah. So I spent...
No, I wasn't looking at a clock. I was just adjusting.
Okay.
We're talking until we're done talking.
All right. Yeah, so I spent about 3 weeks there. They had me on just a bunch of medications to try and keep my liver functioning, keep my kidneys functioning. I was really weak, obviously. They were trying to get my nutrition up.
Feeding tubes, right?
They had taken the feeding tube out, and so I was, attempting to eat food. Some physical therapy to get me back up on my feet and walking, because I was very, very weak. And, they had talked to me about recovery at that point, some addiction support services. I still wasn't ready to admit, I wasn't able to say that I was an alcoholic. I had a mental block. I couldn't admit that I had a problem that I couldn't fix. If given the opportunity to live, I was convinced that I could fix it on my own.
Sure, I appreciate your honesty.
So I spent a few weeks there. I went home. My family, when my wife was at work or the kids were at school, my family would come and work at the house to be with me. At this point, I did take a leave from work for a couple of months. But I didn't engage in recovery at that point. I had joined an outpatient treatment program that I was doing a little bit of work through, but I wasn't.
You were there, but
I wasn't
not there.
there.
Yeah.
I had not resigned to recovery at that point.
It's crazy how different it feels, right? To sit here now and for today, I think we both agree that we're alcoholics who are better served being in a recovery program.
Yeah.
And we both had the experience of being in a room of support or in some form of recovery, whatever that may be, but not really being there. And just how the contrast is so stark for me personally, thinking about my attitude, my mindset, sitting in a room with a counselor and a group of people then versus now, and just how important it is to have the mind and the body be on the same page for it to stick, at least on a day-to-day basis.
And I had this pride block too of, these people that I was in. I'm terminally unique, right?
Me too.
As an addict, I'm a terminally unique person.
I still battle with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, 100%. And I'm in this outpatient program with people that are heroin addicts, and they've been arrested for drug dealing and things, and I'm like, I'm not that. I drink. I drink.
Spotting differences, not similarities, dude.
But looking back, it's like there's no difference.
Yeah,
there's no difference.
The only difference is that heroin addicts tend to crash faster, harder. In my opinion, that's the difference.
Yeah.
Is that heroin addicts just can't last quite as long if they're really in their addiction as an alcoholic. That being said, you found the bottom of the drain pretty fucking fast for a drinker, and I say that with all due respect. To relate to what you were saying, I remember checking myself into rehab. No one took me there. I checked myself in at 25 years old. I knew I had a problem, but I got there and I met people that I decided had a much bigger problem.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, you'll believe it, a lot of the alcoholics there didn't think I belonged there. At that time, at 25 years old, I was drinking 4 times a week. But I was getting trashed 4 times a week when I did drink. But the guys that
You're
were
more
there,
of a binge drinker.
at that time, I was more of a binge drinker. It became ultimately a daily binge drinker. But yes, at that time, I was definitely a binge drinker. Drink a day, recover a day, drink a day. But I couldn't stop drinking once I started. I couldn't stop obsessing once I started drinking about the next time. But to get back to this point before we toss it back to you, the older alcoholics in there were like, what are you doing here? I've been drinking a handle a day for the last 10 years. They're in their 40s or 50s. And the heroin addicts are like, oh, you just get drunk a few times a week? We all do that. And I genuinely was excited by this news. I was like,
sure.
I was like, okay, I overreacted. And boom, off I went to continue my progression. And it just got worse. So it's really interesting how easy it was for me to be like, nah, no, I'm okay. I really can't figure this out. I'll grow out of it, or I'm not as bad as other people. Yeah. Until you start becoming as bad as other people, or worse. Continue.
Yeah, sure. So I was essentially white knuckling it for a couple of months, and I say this all the time, but I think the only thing worse than being an active addiction is to be a dry drunk.
Oh yeah, dude.
White knuckling it is just so miserable.
It's miserable.
It's so miserable. Sobriety without recovery is no way to be.
If you're comfortable explaining what white knuckling means, I always try to assume someone's watching who doesn't know this vernacular very well. What does it mean to white knuckle?
Just drinking without addressing the issue. Not drinking without addressing the issue.
Right. So it's just engaging in the similar mindsets and behaviors and patterns
in the same headspace, with the same problems and the same feelings and the same powerlessness, just choosing to not drink.
Yeah.
And it's really, really hard.
Yeah, it's never been enough for me. No. I used to think that if I just got rid of alcohol, if I could just stop drinking, and it sounds so cliche, and I'm very much a garden variety drunk at the end of the day, that my life would get better, and I would accomplish all the things I wanted to, and everything would be perfect. And it didn't.
No.
It didn't get better at all, actually. Other than physically I got better, but everything else was just as bad, if not worse in certain ways, minus the physical problems.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a weird thing, and it's honestly a very scary thing, because, to be clear, I think, and I wonder if you agree, some people who are maybe problem drinkers, but they're not actually alcoholics, they can stop drinking, and the rest of their life will get better. I've met people like that where they drank like I drank, but they had one bad consequence, and they went, nope, done, not worth it. And then they do move on with their life. Yeah. Those people confused me endlessly. I'm glad that in recovery circles and in education and meeting with other people, I'm glad to know that there's a difference there, because I thought I would just be like them. And that's never been my story. A consequence was never enough for me to just, I better stop drinking and move on with my life and live my life. That hasn't been how it's unfolded. So it's a trip. Okay.
All right. So white knuckled it for a couple months. So I got out of the hospital March 19th, got to about the middle of May, and can't explain it, but one day I picked up a drink.
Yeah.
And drank for a day or two, put myself right back in the hospital.
In 2 days?
Yeah.
Damn, dude, your body was like, no.
My body was just like, nope.
No, yeah.
I was still extremely weak. Because because my liver was so bad when I was in the hospital, but backing up to that, you know, they essentially told me my liver was dying, that I would need a transplant.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That I had to maintain sobriety in order to be on a liver transplant list. Right. I needed to have at least 6 months of sobriety before I could even entertain being put on the list.
And you're 20. How old are you this time? 33? 34?
34. Yeah, this is not even a year ago.
Not even a year ago.
Not even a year ago.
You're a walking, talking miracle at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I'm home, and I'm still recovering, you know, physically from all of that. You know, your liver's not just going to snap back in a couple of weeks.
No, not if it's been pushed that hard.
Yeah, and so I'm one of the side effects of liver failure is your blood doesn't clot as easily, you bruise really easily, and so
does that explain that?
Whatever that hip issue was that I have, I still have a bruise from it now.
You're kidding
almost
me.
A year later. Yeah, I still have a dark spot there from blood that had pooled, and it hasn't dissipated yet.
Wow.
And so that was really, really uncomfortable for a long time, and so I was sleeping in my home office in a recliner.
Just to avoid the pressure?
To avoid laying on my side in the bed. And that was just the only place I could be comfortable. And, you know, I was not drinking, but I was not sober. And I don't know why, but at some point in the middle of May, I picked up a drink, drank for a couple of days. I thought, I'm just going to have a drink. And we know how that goes. I didn't have a drink. I had several drinks, and I ended up back in the hospital for, I was only there for a few hours. But at that point, I admitted to the doctor that I had a problem.
Good for you.
And I went home, and I continued to drink. And I drank for another couple weeks, not as much, until May 31st. My wife was out of town with my daughter for a school thing. My dad was taking care of my son, and I went and I bought a bottle of whiskey and drank the whole thing. And my dad became concerned about me and came to check on me and found me in that state with, you know, the bottle there and other things. Because like I said, I had been drinking for several days. And so that was May 31st. And June 1st, I called my uncle who's in the program. And I was just like, man, I fucked up. You know, and he's like, well, what'd you do that for?
That sounds like a hardened old school program guy. Sounds exactly like what they would say.
And I was like, I don't know. I said, I just wanted a drink. I just thought a drink would make me feel better. I just wanted one drink.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, what did you get? And I said, I got a bottle of whiskey. He goes, well, what'd you buy a bottle for? You know? He goes, you bought a bottle. Why didn't you just buy a shot if you just wanted a drink? Why didn't you just buy the mini bottle? And that was a really good question.
Good question, yeah.
Because the truth was I wanted the bottle.
Yeah, of course.
And so that was June 1st. I went to my first meeting that night. Still very, very, you know, I don't think I wasn't drunk, but certainly don't think I was sober either. But just very sick.
Yeah.
And I've been sober since that day.
Amazing. Wow. Does it ever surprise you that as long and drawn out and painful as your descent to your surrender was, that one day at a time you didn't pick up after that first recovery meeting since? Like, does it ever shock you that it just changed, like something changed, at least in your willingness or internally? Because I find it to be rather astounding for myself. Like, I was so afraid that I was not going to be able to surrender, that I lived in this state of confusion about myself perpetually. Like, I was going to meetings every day for the last 6 weeks of my daily drinking. So go to a meeting, just freaking out, miserable, drunk that night. Crawl into a meeting, freaking out, drunk that night, to the point where I'm like, oh shit, like, I don't know. I just have no idea if anything's gonna click. So to go back to my question, do you ever look back on how many months do you have? It's
7.5.
Congratulations, by the way. It's a really powerful thing. But yeah, does it ever surprise you that it, for whatever reason, that day it took?
Surprise.
I mean, coming from a guy who was given his death certificate essentially and still drank.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that everybody has to get to that place of surrender in their own time.
That's a fact.
For whatever reason, that day, I just was done. I was either going to kill myself, I was going to kill myself drinking, or I was gonna try what everybody else said I needed to try. Those are my only options, right?
Yeah.
Those are my only options.
Yeah.
And only one of those options results in me maybe not dying.
Yeah.
And, you know, I walked into that room that night, and for the first time, you know, ever out loud to a room of people, I admitted that I was an alcoholic and that I needed help. And
how'd that feel?
Incredibly freeing.
Yeah.
Like just a weight lifted.
Yeah.
And, you know, in that meeting, looking around at the room, you know, there was 35 or 40 men. This was a men's meeting, but it was 35 or 40 men, you know, that are relatively close in age to me, relatively similar life stage to me, all talking about their issues with addiction, their problems with alcohol, their problems dealing with life on life's terms, and being able to talk about it openly. They have hope in their eyes and in their words.
Yeah.
They're able to laugh and have a good time. And that was the first time that I felt a sense of hope in my addiction, that, wow, okay, you know, these guys have figured it out. Maybe there is a chance.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a chance.
It's hard to put a price tag on what you just expressed. It's hard to put a value to experiencing actual hope in the midst of such pitiful despair. And it's like you said, I think it's something that it's not for those who need it. It's for those who end up wanting it and needing it at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
You came to a place, like you described, of absolute readiness. Clearly, if you're sober today, you were ready then, and you heard something you needed to hear. I had the same experience. I've had it multiple times, and I don't know that it matters how many times I've had it or lost it. I know it when I have it, and it's worth coveting, and it's worth supporting because it's fleeting. And as I think we both agree, we can't stay sober off of yesterday's recovery work.
Right.
I've never been able to. I've gotten really sober and still drank when I got really comfortable being sober. Yeah. Like maybe I'm normal in the way that alcohol impacts me and how I can go off in my life without addressing that part of me. I would love to spend the end of this talk kind of just discussing how life has been since. We went over what it was like. We certainly spent an appropriate amount of time talking about what happened, and thank you for being honest about that. It takes a lot of courage and a lot of bravery, so thank you. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about what it's like now, and for whatever it's worth, it doesn't have to all be rainbows, by the way. There are parts of early sobriety for me that have been pretty frustrating or stressful or uncomfortable. That said, my recovery has felt endlessly better than my addiction, but I'd love to hear what it's been like for you the last 7 months, getting sober, ups, downs, the biggest changes, just kind of where you're at in your new life.
Yeah, I mean, it's, one of the things I do every day when I wake up is remind myself that I'm powerless over alcohol. And that's an important part of my recovery. Is every morning I let myself off the hook with I'm powerless over alcohol, so now I don't even have to consider that today.
Yeah.
Right? And it kind of lets me off the hook of, okay, I don't have to think about that today.
Yeah. It just is.
It just is.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah.
I like that.
and sometimes I have to do it multiple times a day.
Same
But
thing.
I start my day that way. But what my life is like now is, I'm extremely blessed. I've been able to restore relationships. I've been able to work on starting to restore relationships with my wife and my family, with my kids. My kids are able to be comfortable with me again now. A lot of that was lost.
Was it
during
really?
that time? Yeah. It was scary. We had my wife and I had to have conversations with them about my health in that time, that it was
Right. Damn.
that we didn't know.
Yeah.
And that was scary. And I was just an ugly person. I was angry and bitter and very selfish. Very, very selfish.
It's just the nature of the game, man. Yeah, it's the nature of the game. For anyone that's ever been in active addiction or witnessed it, but I kind of more speak to people that have been in it, it is essentially impossible to not be selfish when you're that deep in it. It's just too all-encompassing, and you're fighting too much physical and emotional turmoil to even have the capacity to see outside of it in a thoughtful way, in my opinion. I'm not excusing it, and I'm not saying we aren't responsible for how that impacts others, but being on the other side of it like you are and like I am, and just seeing how debilitated I was, like, of course I was selfish. I was sick, like really sick. So it's just weird how the two just go hand in hand, for better or worse, and often almost exclusively for worse. But please continue.
Yeah. I've got a great support system in my recovery, a great group of friends and men and women that I can count on, that understand me and where I've been and where I'm at and where I hope to go.
Yeah.
My health is improved a lot. I went from, I essentially spent a couple of months in bed.
When you first got sober?
Yeah, just from that March to June timeframe, I was.
Yeah, okay.
But this summer, I got sober June 1st. This summer I was able to take my family on vacation to Canada, and we got to walk the beaches and things like that there. I've been able to be more physically active. Like I said, my health is getting better. I'm in the gym, which is incredible.
Yeah.
Something I've always wanted to do and be able to do, I'm now able to do.
It's awesome. It suits you as well, minus box jumps.
Yeah.
If you know, you know.
That's funny. But yeah, my life is better in every way. Mentally, my relationship with my higher power is different and stronger and better than it's ever been. I would hope to not trade it for anything. Yeah.
It's amazing. Not to be a downer, because we're going to end on a high note, but
Sure.
Have there been any unexpected struggles in early recovery for you, be it in behavior change, your sleep, your mental health, your outlook, your thought patterns? Just wondering if there's anything that you've had to actively put more effort on that hasn't necessarily come easily, or has it kind of been smooth sailing?
For the most part, it's been mostly easy. Some of the things I've struggled with are feeling my feelings.
Sure.
And having to address them, having to address them instead of masking them with alcohol. Having to face that. And also wanting to face it, but being forced to.
100%. What do you like to do for fun now?
Hang out with my kids.
Yeah.
Go to the gym.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny how, like, when I was younger, things like that, I suppose you could sub kids for friends or something, but they seem so like, sure, whatever. It's part of life. I took them for granted. Have them stripped from you in a really brutal way, and for you contend very much with your mortality at a far too young age. Now it's like being with the kids, coming to the gym, being with friends, using your body. being present, which I think is something that some people roll their eyes at, or roll their eyes when they hear, because like I'm present in my life. If you've been forced to be detached from your life for as long as we have, being able to actually sit in a room and not want to be anywhere else, it's a really, really big deal.
Yeah.
They become really special. They become all we end up wanting or needing on a day-to-day basis. Thank you for being open about some of the different parts of recovery that have been more difficult. I'm having a similar experience, like learning to feel my feelings, address old insecurities, tons of them.
Yeah.
They constantly come up. They're very annoying. I don't want to drink over them. I'd rather push through them. I know drunk me was like begging for the chance to just deal with my stuff and get my life together. I want to finish with this. If you had one piece of advice, not for other people, because I don't want to do that here, but if you had one piece of advice for younger you, and I don't care where you want to go with younger you, if it takes you to adolescence, if it takes you to pre-getting sober in the recent past, is there anything you've experienced or learned in recovery, having been through what you've been through, that you would venture to say younger you could benefit from hearing? That way, maybe that advice directed at yourself could apply to someone else, but I think we both agree that it's best to focus on our own stories, right, than to pretend that we know what's best for others. So with that being said, what pops into your head, even if you don't think younger you would listen, by the way, because most people I think are like, I wouldn't have paid attention. I don't know that I would have, but still, as an exercise.
Yeah. I think I would tell myself that you are enough.
Yeah.
You have value, and you're worth being loved and valued by others. And to accept that from people.
Yeah. That hits me right in the old feelers.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's beautiful, and honestly, I just think that's part of the human experience that gets increasingly more devastating for people that have addiction issues.
Yeah.
Because I think we all experience those thoughts and those feelings. The consequence of not working through them for alcoholics and addicts just tends to be more drastic.
Yeah.
So I love that. I don't think there's anything left to say.
Yeah, perfect.
Thank you for sharing all that.
Yeah.
You have a very calm, gentle, and thoughtful way of expressing yourself. I know a lot of people, I promise you, are going to be positively impacted, and I think some people will even be saved. I know that sharing your story can be really, really powerful in that way. So good job. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Guys, if you enjoyed this video and this interview and you think that someone could benefit from hearing it, please consider sharing this video and getting more people to this sort of content. And if you are struggling yourself in any way, shape, or form, please know that you don't have to go at it alone. We both are two men that very much needed help and needed support, and as Doug said, we're worthy of that support and help, and it's not a sign of weakness. I think that it is in fact an incredible sign of strength. So get support if you need it. We'll put some links in the video description. Let's shower Doug with positivity for being vulnerable on a public platform, and I really appreciate you guys being here. We will try to do an interview a month with other people in between other content. So that's all I've got. 1 day, 1 hour, 1 minute at a time. We can get through what we're going through, I promise, and we can certainly do so together. And we'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks, Doug.
All right.
Pleasure.
Thanks, man.
Hell yeah, that's a wrap.
Awesome.
Good job. You did great.
Thanks.
Yeah, that was fun.
That was cool.
That was really, really cool. How long were we talking for? 90 minutes.
Yeah.
90-minute interview.
Yeah.
That was perfect.
Yeah, it was good.
Hell yeah.
Cool.
Oh, mes buns.